Hello and welcome back, beautiful souls. I am so excited to have you all here today again as we are starting to kind of end our season 5. So we have this episode and next week will be our season finale. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that as we are wrapping up. But today I have a special guest on today and I'm very happy and excited for this. So I have today Emily. Emily is a client of mine who we have met, recently again. And her story is so beautiful and so profound in her healing journey that I asked her if she would be willing to come onto the podcast and talk. In fact, I think you voluntarily reached out to her. You're like, yes, I do want to do it. And I am so excited because I would love Emily to share her story of her journey and her path on this self-healing journey. And what a beautiful place to put it in as we were wrapping up this 5th season. And when we were talking about this microcosmic healing. Again, as I have mentioned over and over in this season, this microcosmic healing is about understanding that we have every answer within ourselves. We have the whole universe within us, and that if we can work past and kind of create this lighter space within ourselves, we can find all of those beautiful answers, and we can kind of weed out and find our truest selves, and then again, learn and train ourselves in how to thrive in our life. And that's one thing Emily is definitely doing for herself. So, hello, Emily. Welcome.
Hello. Hi there. Thank you so much. I'm super excited.
Yes, I am too. I am so happy you are here today. So, Emily, we can kind of start this journey together. Actually, I always like when I have guests on, I like to talk about how we met first. Because we do have a little story of how we met, because like I said, you're a client, but it's not like you just reached out and booked. We actually met in the real world, and that's kind of how that connection happened. Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah. For me, it was the perfect timing in my life for you to reach out and introduce yourself. I know we had met a couple times at a previous job I had, and I don't know what you had felt that day, but the day you decided to come up to me, I was really thinking about my grandpa who had passed and a friend who I had lost. I think it was about maybe a year or so right after. So it was right around the time that I was feeling all of those feelings again. My body was remembering everything again. And it was just the perfect timing. And you walked up to me and you were like, this is going to sound a little strange, but I do this, and, I'm a medium and a spiritual healer, and you handed me your card, and I remember after you had, left that day from where I was working, I had to take a moment, and I sobbed, because it was just like fate had, reached out and given me what I had needed at that moment, because I had grown up loving watching Teresa Caputo, so, I believed in that stuff already, I full-heartedly believed that stuff was real. And I just wanted my own experience in that, especially with all the loss that I had already gone through. I think at that point it was 4 or 5 people I had already lost in my life. So it was a lot, and I was only 25 when I met you, 24 when I met you, somewhere around there. So it was just the perfect timing, I felt, for me, and for me to actually start diving into my healing journey. And at that time I was looking for a therapist as well. And I think it was our first actual meeting. I had told you that I had found a therapist and all these things. And so everything had just fallen into place, and it was the right time for you to reach out to me. And I was so open to it and so ready for it.
Yeah, I remember too. I think I remember our first session. I think you were still kind of wondering about me if I was legit, because I know you're with support and all of that. And then behold, here you are. I think it's been a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, I think it's been maybe 2 or 3.
Somewhere in there, yes.
Yeah.
So, And I think that's the best part of why I'm having you here, is because the stories and what came up in that first session of knowing where you were in your journey, and that it was so raw. If you don't mind me talking about this,
No,
obviously
go
you've been,
ahead.
yeah. You were in such a very raw and vulnerable place, but also I felt it too. That's what you were seeking. Like, help me figure this out. I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like it's that struggle in life where we feel like the world is kind of spinning and it's super heavy, and well, I know I don't want to live like this anymore, but how do I process this and let this go? And you were trying everything. And that's what I loved. You were using your intuition. You were really doing what felt right for you. And what was beautiful too, you didn't just pick one way. You chose multiple ways. So whether you started with me, and then you started seeing a therapist, and then you really truly started your own self-healing journey from there. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story and where it all started?
Yeah. So just a little bit about me. I was raised on the east side of Michigan in a really big suburban area. I'm about 35, 40 minutes outside of Detroit, for just context. And I went to a private school, kindergarten through 12th grade. So it was a Lutheran school. So I was very heavily raised in a religious setting, a very conservative setting. And that, luckily, I went and chose to go to Grand Valley, which is a very liberal arts school, which is a very open-minded school, very diverse community. So that was huge in a shift in my thinking, a shift in my perspective, because not everyone around me was a white Christian. Not everyone around me had the same beliefs. So I definitely got to dive more into just understanding others, where everyone came from, others' beliefs, things like that. So that's kind of where it started. I saw my first therapist when I was at Grand Valley due to a couple breakups. So that kind of got me in the door. It was never anything like it is now. I never really dove too far into anything. But it was just a sounding board. It was a really nice first step into understanding what I was feeling, what I was going through. And then once I graduated, I was very, very depressed, very lost. I was putting my energy into a lot of things, into a lot of people that didn't necessarily deserve my energy. And then I had found the job where I had met you, and I, for the first part of it, thought, like, this is where I belong. This is what I'm supposed to do. I felt very needed. I felt like I was helping a lot of people. I was in a job where I could talk to a lot of people and have a lot of conversations with people, which is something I love to do. But in turn, they took all of my energy, or I was giving too much of my energy to that job. I didn't have a life outside of it. I was coming home and I was sleeping right after I got back from work just because I was mentally exhausted. So that's kind of the trajectory of how I got a little bit into it. And yeah, once I was in that job and I was able to talk to a lot of my coworkers, I was able to understand that, therapy is something that I really did need. I got my ADHD diagnosis while I was working there through some coworkers, which was great, and understanding a little bit about how I process things, just because as neurodivergent, we process things a little bit differently. So yeah, that was kind of the trajectory.
And now I remember that was really big for you too, when you got that diagnosis. So, and to be clear, I guess for everybody else, she was talking about this job. So she was in the mental health field. That's where you were working.
Correct.
And that's why you were able to get all of that support and that information. Yeah, because I really feel it. Actually, this is kind of like a really profound or even interesting subject, if you don't mind me asking, because what it was like for you before your diagnosis and after, and understanding it. Can you tell us what that was for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I went kindergarten through college without being diagnosed. I was a very middle of the road average student. I never really failed anything. I mean, I did not do well in my statistics class in college, but that was like one class out of a million. But yeah, I never really did very well. I was always a last minute kind of person, like, oh, a paper's due in 2 days, I bust out a paper. But I would get a good grade, so it was like there was never any consequence for me not doing it in a timely fashion. So that was always kind of how I ran through school. It was doing my homework in the morning in front of my locker for high school and things like that, and just very motivated by pressure and time pressures, and that's kind of how my brain functions. So when I got into the mental health field, and at this job, when I think I was working there for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and one of the ladies I was working with was like, I kind of see you struggling to balance a lot of these things. You struggle to find a starting point. Sometimes I would get overwhelmed if there was like a lot of things to do. I couldn't figure out where to even start. So she suggested that I go and get tested for ADHD, anxiety. There were other things that I wanted to get tested for as well. So I did, and I went. I was 25, I think, when I got diagnosed. And it changed my life because I at least knew where to look for answers. I knew to look at ADHD research instead of just, why can't I get off the couch today? Why can't I find motivation today? Instead of beating myself down with research like that, I was looking at neurodivergent research that was explaining, like, you may need just a day. You may just need to sit on a couch and let your brain reset. Like, my energy levels and my motivation comes in waves, and I just have to work with the waves, and there will be a day where I clean my entire house and I feel great, and then the next day I'm sitting on the couch again. But I have to be proud of myself for doing the work the day before and just allowing myself to have that rest. So it was a lot more grace that I was giving myself. It was a lot more understanding that I had for my brain. And I wish I would have had it in college. I don't know if I necessarily would have taken anything to like help with that, but I would have, because I'm definitely more holistic in the side of things. I don't know if I would have taken like an Adderall or a Ritalin or anything like that, but I would have at least had tools that I could have set in place to help do homework on time or things like that. And I was a college athlete, so track definitely helped keep me focused, kept more of a schedule, because everything was so close together that I did always have a time pressure in a sense. Your year I had a knee surgery, so I didn't do track, and so I really, really struggled to maintain my grades, maintain going to classes. There was a class I think I missed about 90% of it, and I just emailed my professor and kind of explained the situation, and luckily that professor was kind and understood, but it was definitely a big wake-up call for me.
Yeah. I remember that being really big, and you were, it's almost like you got that wind back in you when you finally understood this. You're like, so much more makes sense, and you were able to kind of manage it a little bit more. And I loved it because you have more grace for yourself now that I know what you did in the beginning. Yeah. And that is beautiful. And so, I mean, I still feel like we're barely scratching the surface of what you've been through. So let's go back even further. So let's go and talk about family here for a minute. I know this is a really big one, and I know this is big for a lot of people out there too. So let's get into this and talk about your healing journey there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my family dynamic, it's me and my sister, my biological sister, and then my mom and my dad. My dad was married before he met my mom, and I have 2 half-brothers. One, my oldest, who has now passed away. He passed away in February. So that was kind of the dynamic growing up. My brothers would live with us for, I think it was every other weekend they would come and stay with us. So that was nice, having a little bit bigger of a family growing up. Me and my sister did not get along at all. We are both Geminis. We are 6 days less than a year apart, so we are also Irish twins. So it was a lot of going at each other pretty much until college. College is when we both found our own roads. We both found that we thrived with our space, and we thrived when we chose to see each other. She's now expecting a baby, so I'm super excited. So our dynamic has definitely shifted over the years. We are very, very different. I am more spiritual, holistic. She is Catholic. She was married in a Catholic church. But we both have respect for each other. We both have respect for each other's beliefs. And I think that happened along in our college years. I think it definitely shifted in our college years as we grew to respect each other as individuals and not shoved in the same bedroom, sharing a closet, forced to have similar friends, go to the same school. I think it was just too close of quarters for us. Growing up, my parents, who are still great, they're still very much active in my life. I could call them, and like my dad just gave me money for my glasses because I need new glasses and I'm struggling right now for some funds. So they're still very active in my life and I love them dearly. But they were definitely more hands-off parents. I was a daycare kid. After school, I would go to latchkey or after school care until 5:30, and my dad would pick me up. And then in the summers until I was about 13 or 14, I think's the cutoff for daycares. I was at daycare from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So they were working, to raise 4 kids, sending us to private school, all that. I do have a love with my teachers from the daycare. The one, specifically Fran, she planned my sister's wedding. She planned my sister's baby shower. So she is still very much in our lives, and same with a lot of the other teachers. Just because they had a huge, part in raising us, a part in shaping who we are. So that was a big part of my growing up and my childhood was these daycare women, was these women who, weren't getting paid nearly what they should have, but were giving them, these children, everything that they could. But then flash forward to, I'd say grade school. My dad and I was a daddy's girl through and through, still am, but like more so grade school, high school. Like I could not do anything wrong in my dad's eyes. I could bat my eyes and ask for whatever I wanted. Like it was a great relationship growing up because I wasn't aware of the fact that he was unfortunately an alcoholic and dealing with the battle that he was dealing with. So I became aware of that probably when I was in, I'd say 7th or 8th grade, and it kind of shifted my perspective a little bit just because I was always aware of the fact that he might be drinking. I was aware of the fact that my dad fell asleep on the couch and it wasn't probably just because he was tired, things like that. So that definitely made me more aware of my surroundings. And with that, my mom was very emotionally unavailable. And I say that only because I don't think she got what she needed as a child. So she was just doing the best she could. So it's just my parents have their own struggles. And I was unfortunately made aware of that at a young age, or I was just conscious enough to pick up on those things at a young age. We ate dinner together at a family, table. Me and my sister would watch TV and eat dinner and things like that. So it wasn't a very emotionally driven family dynamic. It was more of, I'm providing for you. I'm your mom, you're my child. Like, I'm going to take you to school. I'm going to give you food. I'm going to give you clothes, things like that. And my mom has gotten so much better. So she can hug my friends now without cringing. Like, physical affection was never her thing. And my dad is now sober. He's been sober, I think, since March. Yeah. So big things have been happening, especially since when I was younger. I mean, my dad filed bankruptcy when I was in high school. We worried about if the power was going to stay on. I was eating Hamburger Helper, a couple nights a week. I've had a job since I was 15, so I've, gotten a really good work ethic from that just because of seeing my dad, struggle for money and things like that. And, but yeah, my family recently just went through a pretty traumatic experience in February. My grandma passed away, and then 7 days later, my brother passed away. My grandma was expected. My grandma was 90. She had a beautiful life. I think she was ready to get home to my grandpa. My grandpa was also in his late 80s, so he lived a very long and fulfilled life. So that was obviously sad, and I miss her every day and all these things. But then 7 days later, I got a call from my dad that my brother had passed away. And my brother was in his 30s, maybe into his 40s. I always get those ages mixed up. But he was still very young. We're not really sure how he died. We have some suspicion. But those two instances were a huge wake-up call, I think, specifically for my dad. Because every time we've lost a family member, like my grandpa when I was a freshman in college, or my Aunt Mo, who died of alcoholism, I think my sophomore or junior year of college, just genuinely sent him into a spiral. He would start drinking more. He may have been sober for like a week because of the whole thing scared him straight or whatever. Big enough to make him want to do it for himself. And then my brother passed away, and I got a text message from my dad probably 2-3 weeks after my brother passed, and it was the middle of the workday. It was like a random Tuesday, and he was like, I just booked myself a rehab in Florida. I'm getting on a plane and I'm going. Like, I love you so much, but I have to do this. And I cried the whole day. I genuinely didn't know how to feel. I was very proud of him. I was very stunned. But I also knew that this was the only way that this was going to happen. This was the only way he was going to do it. There was no family ties. There were no family pressures. There was no expectation to get sober for someone else. He just did it for himself. And luckily, he had the funds to do it due to my grandma passing, because it is a very expensive thing, unfortunately. But yeah, he went for, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks. He was in Florida, and he has been sober ever since. He loved his experience there. He called me a couple times, and he loved the mental health side of things. They loved how they approached it. He's always tooting my horn, saying I should do this, and that they reminded him of me, which is amazing. But yeah, he loved his experience, and he has been sober ever since. He goes to AA meetings now. He's reading books about trauma, and my mom is, one thing she struggled with my dad was she would binge eat. That was kind of coincidingly her addiction. And now she is doing a medical weight loss plan, and she is thriving. She's doing great. She's seen a therapist as well. So it's very wild to watch my family do a huge shift like this, because it's not something I've known. It's not, like, I've been pushing for this my entire life. I've been very pro mental health. I've been a very big advocate for mental health, and like, we need to figure out what's going on in our family. So to finally see it click, and to finally see it matter to them, and to see them want to do better for themselves, not necessarily for me or for my sister or anyone else, but genuinely for themselves. They want a better life. Like, I could not be happier. That's genuinely all I've ever wanted. So it's outstanding to see my parents making the work.
And now I kind of want everybody to understand this big shift in difference here, because as Emily is talking about this, I was taking little notes so I can see these little differences. First of all, Emily, holy cow, I think it is so beautiful that you can talk about your family in this way, because everything you spoke about, you gave these beautiful facts of how things were and where things are, but you spoke about it in such a higher perspective, because you saw these shifts and you saw everything kind of happening. And if you don't mind, because I just want to make this relatable for people to understand where you were before. Like, let's talk about like when we first started, like our first session. and like where you were when you would talk about family. And is it fair to say that you were triggered? You were always really triggered because I remember talking about your dad, you would be really triggered, and it would be really kind of like an emotional,
it was
like you felt out of control. Right.
Reaction to just even
Right.
talking about situations like that. I was not at a place to accept or understand that they too had stuff that they needed to deal with, that they needed, that they had gone through in their past life, that I was not even a part of, that they're just not my parents, they're their own human being. I was not ready to accept that for a long time. I mean, I even went through a period where I didn't talk to my dad. It was warranted, definitely, because it was affecting my mental health, but we were not at a place where I could confide in him about why I was feeling that way, whereas now he would be ready to listen with open ears and an open heart. A lot about my family. I just didn't understand, like, why, you know, my mom couldn't give me the love and affection. Like, she was not a hugger. She was not a cuddler. Like, my dad was the big, affectionate love bug of the family. So I didn't understand it. I didn't understand where any of this was coming from until I actually started putting pieces together. Of how my mom was raised, of how my dad was raised, of their past relationships, their ideologies, and all this, you know, just understanding how they think and how they see the world was huge, because I was not necessarily selfish, but I was just thinking about my experience and how it affected me, and not looking outward and thinking, well, why are they doing this? What happened to them to make them act this way or not act a certain way? And so, yeah, it definitely was a huge shift, and I definitely kudos you, a huge pat on the back for opening my eyes to a lot of that.
Well, I am just someone who is helping you be able to see that, but I think, thank you, I should say. It's hard for me to take compliments. Okay. But at the same time, I just want to put so much emphasis that even though I said it, you heard it and you were able to do this work for yourself. Because what I think is so amazing, and I know you have a couple other things that you want to talk about, but especially in this moment to kind of see this when we're talking about family and where you were and seeing their big shift and then their healing journeys too. Now, I can feel this. I'm getting chills just wanting to say this right now, but I wanted to make sure you felt it too. So I know you said that your brother's passing was a big catalyst, you know, especially to help your dad in his journey. But I know that for most people, it's not just one moment. It's a big series of moments. And I feel, and I want to know how you feel about it, is that when you stopped and focused on yourself, and you started doing all this healing work for yourself and putting yourself first, do you feel that they really paid attention and it helped them to understand that they could do that for themselves?
Yeah, I think it extends to my family. It extends to my friend group. When I stopped putting myself in others' situations and trying to help other situations and just genuinely tried to focus on moving myself forward and moving myself to where I wanted to be, actions speak louder than words, and I genuinely think that is what helped. And I mean, my dad would always text me and ask me for advice and things like that. Like, he's always been okay to talk to me about those things. But yeah, I think him seeing me genuinely happy with my partner, with my life I have, with the choices I've made. And obviously I haven't made great choices. I was arrested when I was 15 for shoplifting. Like, there are things that I have done in my life that I would never do again, but I don't regret them because I needed that experience to bring me to where I am now.
Yes, ma'am. And Copper, we've got to get sound effects on here because I want like the big woo and like the clap in the audience, because everything you just spoke about just in that last minute was beautiful and profound. Yes, I think that you should be giving yourself a pat on the back because I feel it so wholeheartedly, and it's so big and impactful that for you to really put so much focus in yourself and begin this journey, everyone was watching. And I do know, because of our time together, is the big trickle effect that has happened for you, that I know, because I am the same way. And I'm saying this is not just you, and this is, me. And I know there's a lot of people listening too, that we, as empaths, right? So we're empaths. Emily is a very sensitive empath, that especially when we're this sensitive, we're always wanting to fix other people. And not just other people, we want to fix every relationship because we don't like that feeling, right? Because we feel it tenfold. So when things are not peaceful, and when we have these relationships that are strained, we feel it doubly, because now we feel like we're responsible for the other person and their emotions on top of ours. So we want to fix it, but we need to be very careful. And the hardest part is that we need to sever that, and we need to let that other person deal with their own emotions while we do ours, because nothing can truly heal without that. So is that something that you want to talk about in that journey for yourself?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a really big...
It was, yeah. No, it was a very big thing that I struggled with. And even in our last session, I think we even still mentioned it, which wasn't that long ago, that I'm still working on letting a past friendship go fully. About a year ago, I'd say, me and one of my best friends, unfortunately, had a falling out. I was left very confused about the situation. I was left very hurt, more confused than anything. And I am a person who likes to find answers. I like logic. I like finding, like I said, I like understanding where things come from, especially with friendships and family. Like, I like understanding why they chose certain things. So it was very hard for me to figure out why I had lost this friendship. And for, God, still a year later, I still think about her. I still wish her well, but I still get a visceral reaction. Like if I'm worried that I might run into her at a Dollar General or a Walmart or something like that, I still feel it in my body. I still get that visceral reaction of anxiety, of that I don't want this to happen yet. Like, I'm not ready for it yet. But it has gotten better. I've obviously been doing the work. And just knowing that she had a place in my life, she taught me what she needed to taught me. And that I still love her. I still wish her the best, but it just, unfortunately, we had to go our separate ways. There was no, we weren't benefiting each other anymore. We were just taking from each other at the end of it. We were both just, I don't know. It just wasn't what a friendship should be. Not that you need to have a friend that can always be there or that you can always take energy from, if that makes any sense. But like, I don't want my friends to feel like they have to give me their energy, if that makes any sense. I want it to be very like cohesive. I want it to be like a dynamic experience between the both of us, that we're sharing our experiences and that we're not trying to one up each other or dismiss someone's feelings. And that was kind of where this relationship, unfortunately, had ended. Jealousy, unfortunately, was a factor between... There was a group of 5 or 6 girls that we had group chats and all these things. We were very close-knit. And I tried to, at least I think, I tried to give my time and energy equally. I love my friends dearly. Like, my friends are just as important to me as my partner, which some people may not think that's appropriate, but it is in my mind. And so, yeah, it ended peacefully in my mind. I wish her nothing but the best, but I need friends that will let me be me and I will let them be them. And we come with our baggage, we come with our quirks, but we understand that. And if their baggage or their quirk doesn't fit in your life and doesn't necessarily make you feel all so comfortable, then you can set a boundary. You can peacefully exit that relationship. There's no need to harm yourself or harm anyone else. And that was a big thing because I had harmed friends in the past. I had been that friend that chose to go hang out with a guy even when my best friend and I had plans, or just things like that that, you know, a typical teenage girl unfortunately would do in that sort of setting. And I've gone back and I've apologized to friends that may not even have wanted it, but I just felt like they deserved an apology from me because of the way I treated them. And obviously that makes me feel better as well, but I just think everyone deserves an apology for how they were treated, because I was also bullied as a kid. I was an angry child. So it's just the friendship and the cutting the cords and all of that definitely came very full circle for me this past year, because I had never had a situation like that where I was left so confused and left just wondering what did I do, and in the end I did nothing. It was just how it had to happen.
Yeah. And not easy.
No,
right?
not at all.
This is definitely not an easy journey. And I want to kind of bring this all together in this, because I'm just putting this in that package because I've talked about it before. First of all, I'm kind of putting it all together from how you were describing this friendship journey. You were just looking for that balance, that it wasn't just putting it like one-sided. You know, one person wasn't putting all this energy in while another person takes, because that's also, unfortunately, a very common thing with empaths. We attract narcissists. We attract people that love and seek that kind of attention when we're always just so willing to give. So I also believe, like, you were coming into this place, and as for everybody else out there too that are on these healing journeys, we go through these moments where we are finding ourselves. We find our authentic selves, right? So this is getting down and truly not putting a mask on anymore, and allowing ourselves to be us, like, just without apology, ourselves. And then we find when we're on these journeys, because we are now raising our frequency, right? So our vibrations actually get higher as we are becoming more happy and we're starting to thrive in our life. And we are truly finding ourselves, that there are a lot of friendships that can't handle it because they are not at that place to do the work themselves. So sometimes, again, we have two things that'll happen when we have these type of relationships in our lives, because either these friendships will kind of see that it takes some time for them to adjust, and they might just go with you on this. They're like, I see what you're doing, Emily, just like with your family watching, you see all of this happening, and then you see them starting to do some work for themselves and taking accountability like you did. You were taking accountability. You were kind of you had this awareness, accountability, going through the strokes there. But there are some people that are just not. And sometimes we grow out of these relationships, and it is really hard. And like you said, you still have your moments where you are triggered by it, or these worries and stress and anxiety associated to it, especially if you might run into this person. But I think it's just when we have these moments, it's to remind us that we're still healing and that we're grieving, because we have to allow ourselves to grieve and really understand what is happening, that we do. And like, I know you do too, Emily, and I'm not saying that you don't, but I think it's out there that we are sending love to that friendship or that relationship, whatever it is. And usually it's if they're able to come back up with you, I mean, it's usually open, but you are setting boundaries for yourself because you know you deserve more. And you know how you want to be treated and how you want to be yourself more. And I think that's beautiful. And for you to see that all, again, taking that accountability of the past, because none of us were perfect. We all made these really bad mistakes. But like you said, it is about us learning and evolving and taking those really difficult situations and forming it into a new version of ourselves.
Yeah,
so,
and I will say I'm not the only one who got to learn from that past friendship experience. Like I said, we were a group of 5 girls. So it didn't just affect me, it affected every single one of us. And unfortunately, she slowly ended friendships with all of us. And now us girls know how to more effectively communicate with each other because of how we were talked to for 4, 5, even 8 years. Our one friend was friends with her for 8 years. We know how to express our feelings without making it seem like the other person was responsible for those feelings. So we have grown together as a girlfriend group, which is also great, because it's not only just like me taking anything away from this situation. Like we're all taking it like something away from this, and we're all able to use it and benefit from it, and we're honestly a lot stronger.
Right. And that's amazing. I love it. Yes, ma'am. Yes. See, it's again that bigger perspective that sometimes we can see these really difficult situations turning into something bigger and more beautiful. So, Emily, before we wrap up this episode, were there other pieces that you wanted to talk about as from your healing journey?
I mean, I have lost a lot of people in my life, and a lot of people are fortunate to still not have lost people. So with the grieving process, I mean, I'll just say it was different for me every time. I mean, I've lost 7 people now, I think. And it was definitely different every time. The first person I lost was my grandpa. And I remember just melting to the ground and just sobbing. And that was me for probably 4 days. And then each time I've learned how to let my feelings come in a little faster. And not that grief has ever gone away or that I move through one quicker than the other. It's just I've learned to accept that I need to let these feelings come in and come out. And I know they're still here. I know that I still have an army of angels behind me. And just if you have anyone in your life that's grieving, if you feel anger from them, if you feel distance from them, just give them the space they need and feel free to check in. I loved when people checked in and just said that they were thinking of me or that they love me. But there's no words that's going to make anything better in that moment. There's nothing you can really say that's going to make that person feel better. It's just going to take time. It's honestly up to that person when they feel better and how they move through it. And I now am in the place where I can see grief as a blessing, because I've had those moments with those people. I've had that life with that person. I have those shared memories, and I love talking about the people that I've lost, where some people in my friend group still struggle to talk about my friend Austin, who passed. But I don't know, it's just, I want to remember them fondly. I want to still bring up their memory and still let everyone know that they were a big part of my life. So grief was a huge thing that I've had to figure out my 27 years, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's shorter than that because all of your grief has happened in the last 10 years, maybe? Less than that?
It happened quick, and it happened in clumps. Like, I remember it was my grandpa, and then my friend's brother passed away from suicide, and then it was my friend's mother in junior year from cancer. Then it was my aunt, and then it was my grandma, and then my brother. So 6.
Yeah, and that is a lot. And I love that you touched on this and talking about this for other people who might be experiencing grief. Not only that, but those who are trying to support other people going through grief. And it's very true. And thank you for sharing that, because you've experienced a lot of different grief and you have dealt with each one very differently. And just like I've seen from the outside looking in, working with a lot of clients, every single person deals with it very differently. And it is just allowing that space and making sure that we are not putting an idea or expectations of what grief needs to look like, or how fast it should take, or how big or not so big it could get. Because as you said, Emily, thank you. This is amazing. And I'm raise the roof on that. Let your emotions pass. Let your emotions come through and express it, and then keep going. Because again, the more we hold on to these really big emotions because you're trying to stay strong or whatever you're trying to do, remember that you have to take care of yourself first. And if you need to make sure that you're giving yourself a space to fall apart, give yourself that space, because otherwise holding on to it, it's still there. it wasn't given a space to move on, because now it's stuck in your system. And then this is where we start having some more anxiety issues or physical ailments. So now we're looking at maybe blood pressure or back pain, or, however your own individual body will process that, they hold on to it, and it just like intensifies in there. So yes, process the way you need to, and look for support where you can.
Say a little tip for the neurodivergent group. Music is a huge factor in how I feel my emotions, because I am someone who struggles to feel my emotions. So I will literally get in my car, blast music, and sob. But
I love that. Thank you.
It's how I feel. It's how I let my emotions in. I will still hear songs that remind me of my friend Austin, and I will scream the song and sob, and it is the most cathartic thing in the world.
Yes, ma'am. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people I've been asked, but how do I process this? How can I tap into that? I'm not that kind of a person. There's no wrong way. And, you do it through music. Yes, tap into that music. It's very expressive. Find that one where you were connected with that it will allow it to kind of process out. Again, it's writing, it's talking to a friend or even a professional. If these are really big emotions, that's okay. It's wherever you are feel so guided to let it go. And there's no shame in this in any way, shape, or form. But I kind of want to bring it back. That was wonderful and beautiful. Thank you for sharing that aspect, Emily. But more than anything, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this journey, because I really wanted people to hear, because again, as you're talking about this, you have such a beautiful higher perspective on so much of this now, where you are calmer and you are truly in a place of so much more joy and your life. I mean, you talk about it in these big, beautiful plans and things are going well, compared to in the beginning where maybe it seemed a little bit more dark and more bleak, because that's just where you were and you were processing. So for everybody else out there, I just wanted you to hear, other people's journeys, and that we're all very different, but we are all going through it. And that if you give yourself some time, some space, some love, and then truly finding the answers you are seeking, following your own intuition and what you need, you will find those answers. Again, with that universe is within us. Allow yourself to tap into that and find your path so you can finally thrive in your life. Yes. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy I could do this.
Good. I know this is another healing journey for you, because again, we're going full circle now, Emily. Your journey has now come to a point where obviously we're always forever on the self-healing journey, but now you get to tell your story to help others. So, and I hope it does help any of you out there just to find some commonalities there, or maybe you took something with you today. But thank you so much, all of you, for listening. And until next time, especially for our season finale next time or next week, be kind to yourself.